Another day of water woes for Johannesburg residents, I'm afraid. Rand Water's planned 58-hour shutdown came into effect on Tuesday night. Now, since then, affected residents have relied on tankers for potable water, but some say they've struggled to access this resource. eNCA's Manqoba Mchunu has been on the ground in various areas talking to residents about how they're coping. Now, Manqoba, you've been following the Rand Water shutdown story right from the start, and the water expected, or the work rather, to end tomorrow, and we've been told repeatedly, but that doesn't mean that our water will suddenly return. Is that still the case? What's Joburg Water telling you?
Certainly, Marcel, we're expecting the work to be concluded tomorrow at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's according to Rand Water, which had indicated that this planned maintenance is going to last up until Friday. And when we spoke to them yesterday, they said that everything was on track as far as completion is concerned. We know, of course, that there have been some impact on some of the areas that have been affected, mostly high-lying areas that are bearing the brunt of this particular shutdown. Many of the areas running dry today. We saw quite a number of communities that are struggling as far as water is concerned, and some of those include Soweto. Many of the townships within Soweto itself do not have any access to water, and in fact they were not even able to access water tankers earlier on due to the fact that the water tankers had been deployed to the critical areas, which included schools and hospitals as well as clinics. We actually saw many of those water tankers being deployed to those areas, but as for community members, mostly community members of Diepkloof that we spoke to earlier on, they were not able to commute, Marcel, or go to any of the tanks. There were no tanks that had been placed in their vicinity, and so many of them found themselves having to walk for kilometers, about 3 kilometers, to the neighboring Motsoaledi to try and access water. They were telling us that there are some people that are also charging them a fee of 7 rand per bucket just to help those that are really in need as far as water is concerned. But we know that the contingency plans have been put in place. Joburg Water saying that they have now added an additional 65 water tankers and around 149 tanks themselves just to assist as far as this situation. But residents are saying that it's not enough. They're not seeing these tanks and these water tankers, but also we know that there's been a problem as far as refilling some of these tankers is concerned. Earlier on, we're at River Lee, where we saw quite a number of tankers queuing there for a long time because the water pressure was low there, and some of the areas where these water tankers fill up the depots had already run dry. So this gives you a picture of what happened. I spoke to one of the residents earlier on about the situation and about the contingency plans that they have. This is a resident from Lenasia we spoke to earlier on just to find out how they are preparing for this particular impact. They are also under the eNCA system that has been largely affected, that is still undergoing that maintenance. Take a listen.
Recently, we're very fortunate as Lenasians. The reservoirs are very low. As per the information I received this morning, the latest was that it should dry up very soon. But, I've been very proactive as a councillor in the area, and we have Lenasians and community members that are very obliging when it comes to offering water. So we have boreholes and we have contingency plans. And as you see behind me, I'm here at the old age home in Nirvana today, live, and you see that we have put a tanker here last night. So I put a tanker here, so if the water dries up here in the old age home, we have this tanker here. And this morning, I also, organized another tanker for our Lenasia clinic as well. So, we have a backup plan so that, the residents don't suffer without water. As you see in the other areas where there's absolutely no water and residents are going 3 kilometers out to get water. So we have alerted the public earlier so that we could have these proactive measures put in place whereby residents are at comfort and ease. And should residents, need urgent water, we're always available and amenable to provide water in this particular area because we have these contingency plans put in place. Also in the larger areas of Lenasia, we have JoJo tanks placed. So we have in the CBD as well, we have some tankers there, the Jojo tanks, and in some of the main roads of Lenasia. And we have very active, vibrant WhatsApp groups where the community is, nice and close, so that they can inform us regularly as to what is exactly happening on the ground. And fortunately for us, the water that has been coming through has been taking us through thus far.
Now, Manqoba, as I understand, that was Imran Moosa. He's with the COJ's Environmental Infrastructure and Development Chairperson, but speaking very much there about the specific experiences of that community in Lenasia. And it does seem, even before the shutdown started, between the reporting from yourself and Slindile Masakane, there was a sense that far more residents and communities were aware of what was to come. And in a lot of these areas, they did organize themselves. That has had an impact just on how big or small the impact has been on the day-to-day lives of South African residents in certain areas, of course.
Certainly, Marcel, and I think that also just shows the glaring, inequalities in some communities, because the residents that we spoke to earlier on from Diepkloof at the hostel, they were telling us that they had no information. They heard rumors, but they were not quite sure. Many of them saying that they couldn't access any of those online platforms to receive some of the messaging. And I guess I'm not sure whether there were any placed in mainstream media as far as this is concerned. But they were saying that they only, became aware of the situation last night. In fact, most of the residents, even from Freedom Town, I think it's Freedom... one of the townships here, Freedom Square, in fact, here, telling us that also they did not get those messages, Marcel. They were unaware. They only saw last night that, in fact, there was interruption to the water supply. So it does seem that most of the residents in suburban areas have received the messages, but when you speak to people here, they tell you that they were not aware or they either did not receive the message on time. And I think it speaks to that issue of whether people had access to online platforms or not. But certainly many of them are impacted here in this particular area.
Okay, Manqoba Mchunu, we'll leave it there. Our colleague giving us an update just on how this water outage, as a result of planned and needed maintenance on Joburg's water system, is impacting various areas here in Johannesburg. We thank him for that update.